more of an intuitive person, you are more of an introvert than an extrovert. I think personalities are very much important. The fourth P, I think we should be helping our children when they are choosing their career, is something that is called the prevailing market. You see, markets are dynamic. There is no need of a person pursuing a career that will not be absorbed by the market. Allow me to say, I have been visiting banks quite often, and I'm so sure majority of you are listening to me, we realize the dynamic changes in the banking industry. For example, right now, I'm so sure all of you, people who bank with Equity Bank will tell you they have an Equitel card. That means what the Equitel card did, it replaced tellers, people who you'd find at the tellers. That means this is a market that is evolving quite fast. And therefore, any person who is pursuing diploma in banking and account may find that as a challenge because of what we call the prevailing market. Our market is now so much IT. In fact, I went to Strathmore another day and realized they have already rebranded their Bachelor of Commerce degree, and they are calling it financial engineering. Why? Nowadays, as much as you are very good in accounting, you have to adopt IT as an aspect in that. And I think those are some of the things we are saying. So we have talked of performance, we have talked of passion, we have talked of personality, we have talked of prevailing market, and the last P, I have always said that we need to study when you're helping our children choose their career is something that is called pay, P-A-Y. That the reason as to why I am pursuing this career is so that I can have something to put my daily bread. And anytime you consider pay, you even realize sometimes even pursuing a talent can even be more rewarding than even pursuing an academic pursuit. And that's why you see the CBC have started realizing or have acknowledged that even talent can help you put foods on the table. You see, that's what I'm talking about. Somebody like Maria, we are talking about this girl called Maria. You know, she is earning her daily bread out of talent. And that's why we are saying the work of a counselor in a school is both to help interlink academics and careers in building a holistic student in class. Finally, I think should be the fifth question before I give it back to Grace, is what do I need to have in my journey to success? When we talked of seeing my future from now, then the question I need is what do I need? I remember there's a time Jesus Christ was asking his disciples and he said, who is this wise person who before they build their house, they don't first sit down and calculate the cost? That means before you know where you want to go, you need to sit down and calculate the cost. I'll give you a very good example. Any person who wants to move from here to Mombasa have different avenues they can use. Number one, they can use a bus. How much is a bus? 1,500. But the question is, how long will you take from here to Mombasa using a bus? Maybe 10 hours. Another alternative you have, you can use a plane. For plane, you can use probably 40 minutes. But how much do you need? I think currently is 7,000. The question is, where you want to go, the first thing you need to do is to ask yourself, what do I need? And that is where now the reality of academics comes on board. If I want to become an engineer, this is what I need. Number one, I need this particular grade. And you know, when we go to the university, one of the career requirements you usually tell them is what we call cluster subject, that in this area that you are pursuing. For example, if you want to become a lawyer, they have said you should be very good in English, you'd have a minimum grade in history, blah, 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 blah. That's what I say. What do you need? So number one, you need sacrifice. We need to help our children know that the reason as to why you are sacrificing today is so that you have a beautiful life tomorrow. These are aspects. And that's why I'm saying the work of a counselor is to play the role of complementing. You complement what the other teachers are doing. You equip these children holistically so that the work of other teachers will be to teach academics concepts, but the work of the counselor is to complement these children so that by the end of the day, we have a child who is a holistic child. And where a counselor feels ill-equipped, a counselor should be empowered. The office of a counselor should be empowered to bring on board the resource people. And that's why one of the three roles of a counselor is number one is to connect the child with the outside world. How do you connect? By also ensuring as a counselor, you're also connecting yourself with the outside world so that you bring resource people to school so that they can help equip this child to the outside world. Number two, connect with the child. Listen to the child. One of the greatest skills a counselor can have is the listening skills. I remember when we went to the counseling skills, we are told that the only role you have as a counselor is to empower the child or to empower your client, but never to decide for them. I remember I have always been told this. Anytime a couple comes to you, allow me to use this example. Anytime a couple comes to you for counseling and they have differed so much, and even you as a counselor, you realize that these people, the best they can do is to divorce. Even when you are very conscious of that as a counselor, you are never supposed to suggest divorce to them. Because if they divorce and later they come and agree, they'll always blame you. What you need to do is to equip them with skills on how to handle their issues, but leave the decision making for them. What do I mean as a counselor? The work of a counselor is to equip. A counselor will never equip others if they are not equipped themselves. And that's why I've always told counselors, go to the internet, be updated on what is happening. Last time we said, and I'm so sure we'll also be talking about this, as counselors, understand the types of drugs that the children are taking. Number three, understand that these children at their early age are already engaging themselves with sexual relationship. Don't live in denial. It is true, probably you as a person, you have self-control, but realize the children we are having right now are exposed. Number three, I remember a school I visited in Karatina, I think this week. 3/4 of the children are struggling with masturbation. And I was trying to check the source and I realized it is because these children have been watching pornography at home. These children have been engaging themselves with sexual relationships at home. And so when I told them to write questions, boys' school, 3/4 of the questions they were saying, how do I overcome masturbation? Why? These are the realities on the ground. So when these children find a counselor who is equipped, they are able to connect with you. But when they find that this counselor is not equipped, this counselor is only trying to tell them, do this, don't do this, the do's and don'ts. A counselor should be well equipped to handle issues of doing masturbation, to understand the issues of lesbianism are real, to understand the issues of cults are real. And once they start connecting with this, then what they do, they become empathetic. A counselor is never supposed to be sympathetic. A counselor is supposed to be empathetic. You ask yourself, if I was a child like these children of this age, how would I handle things differently? Back to you, Brace. I think I have handled the question of identity, crisis, and self-identity. Brace.
Wow, thank you, Paul. That was quite detailed, and I can see you had quite a lot of passion in telling us about what is self-identity. You've actually dug deeper than I thought. I think I like, personally, I like the aspect of mentorship office. Instead of going to the guidance and counseling office and I'm told I'm going to the mentorship office, I think it makes a lot of sense, but I think this is something that we can think through, and I appreciate your participation and your contribution in that. Now, there's somebody who just wanted you to elaborate. Paul?
Yes, please.
Are you there?
I am.
There's somebody who wanted you to elaborate just a bit on what you meant by lack of affirmation. Maybe very quickly, before I can go back to further.
Thank you so much. We have already said this, that we have two types of voices that speaks to our lives. Our self voice, that is, we believe in ourselves, but everybody wants somebody who believes in them. Affirmation is where, even in a society that doubts you, there is still a person who believes in you. A voice that affirms you, a voice that believes in you, especially very critical for a person who is called a teenage. Remember, at the age of 12, 13, 14, a teenage moves from what we call dependent to interdependent. I don't like calling it independent. They move from dependent to interdependent. The only person who moves to independence is a mature person. But when you talk of interdependence, means other than myself, I have also some people I want to consult so that I can understand whether what I feel is right or wrong. And that's why you realize teenagers behave the same, teenagers dress the same, teenagers reason the same. All these schools that you find strikes, there is no child who can cause a strike by himself. This child who causes a strike, there is somebody he has talked to who agreed with him or disagreed with him, and that is why the strike is formed. For example, allow me to use Makueni Boys High School. We have been told that the Form 4 classes, 280 of them decided they will not shave. Any wise counselor would tell you, the bottom line is not shaving. There is a message that these boys are trying to say. Probably we feel like nobody is listening to us. There is a message, there is a code, there is a message that they are trying to send that is still not very clear. When we talk of affirmation, we say, if there is a person who goes through a lot of identity crisis, is a person who is called a teenager. Number one, he is trying to, this is all that I have been taught by my parents. When I come outside there, it is not working. I'll give a very good example. A child between 1 to 12 years, he has been told sex is bad, sex is not good, you should abstain. When this child reaches 12 years old or 13 years old, as they are going to school, they find billboards everywhere. Use condom, sex is good. They go to the media, they watch, everybody saying sex is sweet, such kind of thing. You can now imagine the conflict of what I have been raised, being told, and what I see outside there. A child, and allow me to say this, smoking is not good, smoking is not good, drinking is harmful. But the person who is drinking the most, the person who is smoking the most is the English or mathematics teacher. What this child gets into is what is called identity crisis. And so what I call affirmation is the voice of reason. Somebody who continues telling them, continue doing it. In fact, can I say this? Even when we have these teams like Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United, as good as these players are, you realize one of the greatest investments these clubs do is investing on people we call cheering squad. People who can come and cheer them so that the gift in them, the self-belief in them, that they can score, they can win, it is very important. Every person needs a person to affirm them. The most important department in a school is the counseling department. Because what the counseling department does, it builds the holistic person. That I know you failed in 40, you got 40% and you have failed. Come, can I know, is there any other reason other than the content being heard that has made you fail? Could you be going through a challenge? One of the things that a counselor should be able, working in consultation or in collaboration with the other classes, is a teacher comes and say, Counselor A, a girl called Rachel have been a very good performer, but the performance has started declining. When we are talking of the counseling department collaborating with that department, is that the counselor is able to pick this child very fast, identify why this particular child is dropping. Is it an issue from home? Is that the relationship with the teacher? Is it the teacher's perception? Is this a subject attitude? Is that the emotional turmoil? When the counselor picks this, the counselor affirms the girl that whatever you are going through, I think you can be able to overcome it. You can be able to pick it very fast. And that's why I'm requesting the principals who are listening to me, kindly ensure that the workload of the counseling department is not as much as possible, so that we also don't have what we call the counselor's burnout. Because sometimes you realize, and I have seen this in so many schools, children want to see the counselor, but the counselor is so tired because he or she has been handling so many subjects that even the attention to listen to a particular child. And remember, one of the skills of a counselor is patience. You can patiently listen to a child pouring themselves out without dismissing them because you are either tired or dismissing them because you feel drained. Once the counselor, in fact, I have always said this, probably even what you can do in our school, so that you can ensure that our counseling department is well equipped. Let's have a particular day, probably on a Wednesday, when the counselor has no lesson to teach, so that they are not drained, so that even the children know Wednesdays you are out to see the counselors. At that particular level, I even say, children are told any child who wants to see a counselor can borrow permission from the class teacher, so that even maybe during the session, they can even see the counselor, so that you also don't have doing counselors. But what I was saying in summary is that affirmation is that external voice that helps these children build what is called self-belief. They believe in themselves, they believe in their abilities, and they believe that despite of what we are going through, we still can make it. So affirmation is an external voice. In fact, can I say this? An affirmation is an external positive echo. Another voice outside there that helps you believe that you still can make it despite of all the odds that you are going through. Back to you, Brains.
Thank you very much, Paul. I want to believe that the teacher who had asked that question is now satisfied. I can see that the principal, Lawyer Yata Girls, is with us, Karibu, together with your teachers. I want to, before I move on to the next step, just some input from Father Julius. Father Julius, maybe your input as the church on self-identity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blaze. I think I really concur with what Mr. Paul has said, because a lot of problems which you are going through in our schools is based on identity crisis. And sometimes it's because we are not understanding the children very well. And then the aspect of the relational aspect, which first, the relationship between the parents and children is not good. And when they come to school also is a problem. And from our perspective, we look at this from two levels, and I really agree that we must journey with the children and realize that both at home and in school, we are doing parenting, but the basis of the parenting not be on grades alone. The aspect of the relational aspect based on character first, and when you build the character, it is not good. And when they come to school, also and enhance the identity of this. And from our perspective, there are two areas I want to this. There is agree that we must journey with the children and realize that we are doing the next is coming from
Yes, I'm there.
Yes.
Yeah, there's somebody who's interrupting with some voice. Can you mute? Are you there, Teacher Jacqueline?
Yes, I'm there.
Yes, we are better off.
Yes.
Sorry for that interruption.
Yes.
It's okay.
Father, back to you, and sorry for the interruption.
No, I was saying in the crisis, in the identity areas I want to have this from
Jacqueline, Teacher Jacqueline, are you able to mute so that we don't get the interruption? Back to you, Father, again.
Thank you very much. I was saying we look at two areas in understanding the children in relationship. So one is what we call I relationship, whereby the child is able to relate to themselves. That sorry.
Yeah, there's some interruption that is coming. Please, one of the...
It's coming from one of our panelists. It's Mrs. Njao, Jacqueline. I think
kindly be on the lookout. Yes, it's Jacqueline, yes.
Yes.
Okay, let's continue.
So I'm talking about what we call I relationship. It is whereby we need to nurture our children, first of all, to relate to themselves, to have good image about themselves, to realize that their being does not depend on what is external, but it's more inherent. Then we talk about I-thou relationship. This is whereby we look at now a child as to relate with an external factor, and the first factor should be the parent, and then the mentor, the teacher, or the person they are journeying with. And now this is the area where now we come to the aspect of affirmation. The affirmation which Mr. Paul is talking is very important. And there are two aspects of affirmation. The first affirmation is that the one of now, I. The child should first and foremost affirm themselves. There is one principle which is coined by a gentleman called Ratan Tata, who is an Indian, and he calls it a self-affirmation repetition principle. Self-affirmation repetition principle. This is whereby you teach a child every morning when they wake up to tell themselves something good. Well, I'm created wonderfully. Are moving on to do it to go and succeed. They tell themselves good things every day, and now this is builds their confidence. The other aspect now, it comes from the external factor, whereby a parent, although the child may not be doing very good, they tell them, I still believe in you. The same with the aspect of the teacher, even when the children are not doing very well in academics, they realize that they are also able to excel in other areas. And they tell the children, no matter what happens, we still believe in you. The moment those children get that affirmation, then they'll have a reason to move forward. They have a reason to realize that somebody believes in me and all is not lost. And eventually, these two voices are very important. The voice of a parent and the voice of a mentor who is a teacher, and also now the internal voice. And this must be brought together. And this is going to solve a lot many issues, and is going to really bring and improve the image of the child on themselves, and also boost their self-esteem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Father. Thank you for that elaboration. Back to you, Paul.
Yeah.
And Paul, we are now coming back to our other area, and this is on sex, sexuality, and relationship. And I'll just ask in a very simple way, what comes into your mind or anybody's mind when you talk about sex or sexuality, or sex and sexuality? What gets into your mind?
I wanted to, first of all, say that why our African children, and allow me to talk of African children, are struggling with the subject of sex and sexuality is something we call the African taboos. And when I'm talking of taboo, I'm saying people from time immemorial, and I think it is because of our upbringing and the exposure that our parents had, is that sex has always been related to nakedness, while it is not. Once we talk of sex, we are talking of an act. But when we talk of sexuality, we are talking of a subject of information. And so we have a society that is so ignorant about sex, so afraid of discussing about sex, and because of that, they are denying our children information about sexuality. And anytime children are not informed about sexuality, they end up even messing when it comes to sex. There is somewhere, and I'm a person who loves the Bible as my guide. Jesus said, I think it is Jesus or the word of God said, that my people perish because of lack of knowledge. Ignorance is very costly. When you see our children being so much exposed to sex, in fact, I remember there is this cyber cave I love going. And I remember during COVID, and I'm so sure any person who has I'm a university lecturer, but I have always told people, any person who loves research would tell you, any person who wants to do a research probably on a topic on the effect of sex and sexuality in our society today, one of the point of data collection should be cyber cafes. And they will tell you, one of the most searched information, Googled information, or information that is browsed currently, number one would be pornography, and number two would be the issues of sex and everything. Why is it that our children are really looking for information in the cyber about sex? Why? It is because they do not have any information about it. Or number two, the information they have been given about sex is not adequate. And remember, we have said, as I come so that I return it back to you, we have talked about sex education and we have said, you give different information or you give different content of information to different class of people. When a child is between 11, 12, 13, 14, their sexuality is aroused because of the hormones they carry. It is not wrong. It is never wrong to have sexual feelings. Sexual feelings, actually, to me, it is part of sexuality. And therefore, what we need to help our children in the society do is to connect with their sexuality. And that is what we talk of sexual education. Sex education is assisting our children connect with their sexuality. Because we are sexual beings, whether we love it or not. We are product of sex because it is by our parents meeting together, having an act of sex that we met. And therefore, as teachers, as counselors, this is a topic that we need adequate information to be well equipped about sexuality, so that once our children are equipped with sexuality, the topic of sex is not. So what I'm saying, when you told me about sex and sexuality, I'm saying that we are coming from a society that has very restrictive taboos. Number two, we have very different definitions of what sex is. If you go to social media, everybody talks about sex styles and types of sex and such kind of things. And therefore, it is the role of the counselor to be very well informed, and I'm sure that is what we shall do today, to equip our counselors on sex education, so that when they go to these students who are in high school, they can equip them well. So I was talking about sex being an act of intercourse or expression of feelings, because it may not necessarily lead to intercourse, but it can even be whereby people are exchanging feelings, romance, and something like that. But we are talking of sexuality as a subject of information, of understanding our bodies, our emotions, and our hormones. Back to you, Brace.
Okay. Thank you very much for that explanation. Maybe, I don't know that we have teacher Njue with us. Jacqueline, are you there? Are you there, Jacqueline? Okay, if Jacqueline is not there, because I wanted to see some explanation from teacher Jacqueline about whether teachers are also prone to sexual advances from their students and vice versa, because these are things that do happen. I don't know what would be your opinion, Mr. Paul. Do you think?
Wow, that's a good.
Yes.
Brice, I'm so sure I have visited several teachers' colleges. Unlike before, the teachers we are having today are quite young teachers. You see, the level of education currently allows even at 21, 22, 20, because by the time a person has completed a Form 4 class, they're either 17 or 18. They go to the university for 4 years, that is 22 years. Maybe they take 2 or 1 year to be admitted. I've met so many teachers who are 25 or 26. A person who is between 15 or 13 to 29, they are at their most proactive stages in life. You can imagine a teacher who is at a very proactive stage of life sexually, meeting a teenager who is also at their most primest stage in their hormonal stage, the two meeting together. So it is a two-way that the teachers are also at a very disadvantaged place. And number two, the students are also at a very disadvantaged stage. There are also other factors that can make a teacher to be very prone to sexual issues. Number one is their childhood's upbringing. Some of the teachers we are having, in fact, can I say 99 of our teachers are more into IT than anything else, so that you find a teacher in class and they're still having fun. So majority of them were in Facebook. The kinds of peers they are keeping as teachers, if they are discussing about sex, you'll find that the teacher will be very prone to that. Number two is personal discipline. Have this teacher grown in an environment where they are also sexually disciplined, or are they in an environment they are exposed? Number three, I think for teachers, we are talking about teachers, not students. Number three, does this teacher have a supportive family? Some of our teachers are quite very young. Unfortunately to say, some of our lady teachers are coming from broken relationships, and so they are a bit desperate. Number four, some of our teachers are also coming up from families where nobody taught them about issues of sex. And that's why I'm saying, Brace, and allow me to a bit dig deeper here and say, sex is private, but sexuality is not. Let me repeat that again. Sex is private, but sexuality is not. And so I cannot come here to discuss about my sex life, but as a counselor, I am supposed to discuss sexuality to my listeners and even to anybody who is listening to me. And when I'm talking about sexuality, I am talking about it on three angles. Number one, about our attitude about sex. As long as we have not addressed the issue of attitude as a church, as a school, and as our society, our teenage will always be in a very big challenge. I'm so sure even everybody who is listening to me, nobody would confidently say that their parents talked to them about sex. Why? From our time we were young, our attitude towards sex was, don't do it. It is wrong. It is bad. But when children reaches at the age of 12, 13, 14, they realize it is not as bad as we are told. In fact, by the time they are going back to school, the children are exchanging notes and saying how I enjoyed, how I felt good, how when I gave, in fact, I remember a girl who always had a lot of money, and she said, it is because I know I was asked to have sex, and that's why, you see, I had all this money. So other girls say, why should I be suffering and yet I can have money? So we need to discuss number one. It is true, we can have an attitude about sex, but our children are suffering. Some of the people could also have a wrong attitude about sex because of their sex, what we call sex history. What do I mean with sex history? Some of them could be sexually abused.
Yes, can you hear me?
Some of them could be going through what we call sexual harassment. I think we need to understand that. Number two is something to do with sexual feelings. As teachers, we need to be real. That when boys are between 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, me included, when I was 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, my body began changing. My private parts began changing. My physical body began changing. What was causing all these changes? For boys, it's a hormone that is called testosterone. We usually say that testosterone has two effects on boys. Number one, it gives boys what we call sexual excitement. Remember, testosterone is the hormone that makes boys produce sperms. It is the cause as to why boys produce sperm. So you can imagine the sexual energy. Number two, it is also the hormone that brings what we call exploration and adventurers. You realize that boys become very restless. When they are 12, 13, 14, they want to strike. They want to go out. They cannot stay in one place composed. Why? Because of this hormone that is called estrogen. For girls, they have a hormone that is called estrogen. What this hormone does, it is the same hormone that brings them to have monthly periods. It is the same hormone that makes them to feel sexually excited. It is the same hormone that brings mood swings. A girl will be very happy in the morning, very stressed in the evening. So we need to be real with this hormone and help girls understand their bodies and understand how to deal with their bodies. For girls, and I think let me talk about for boys. For boys, We also talk of sexuality being, so allow me to say sexuality is involved in 3 areas. Number one, the attitude. We need to form a very positive attitude towards sexuality. Number two, we need to connect with their sexual feelings. Let them know that how they are feeling sexually is not wrong, is not demonic, is not immoral. It is just a biological function. And then number three, help deal with sexuality as an activity. A child who is between 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 may engage into sexual activities as follows. Number one, they are, because of that sexual excitement, they are at a risk of engaging into something we call pornography. Pornography comes as a result of curiosity. And so counseling department should help these children understand what is sexuality and the effect, no, what is pornography and the effects of pornography. Because if they don't, the social media will ensure that they get captives. Do you know majority of our teenagers today are already prisoners of pornography because nobody has told them it is harmful. So this is one of the activities we need to teach when you are teaching the subject of sexuality. The second thing we need also to talk when you're talking of sexuality is something that is called masturbation. Girls go through masturbation, boys go through masturbation, and as innocent as masturbation can look to be, it can become very addictive. So we need, and I think my book, Even Boys Cry, has handled all those topics. What is masturbation? How does masturbation begin? What is the effect? Does it have any positive? Does it have any negative? A counselor should be equipped on that. Number three, another thing that is an activity of sexuality is what we call homosexual relationship and heterosexual relationship. Heterosexual relationship is where a boy feels attracted to the opposite sex. Let us talk about that. Let us help them to realize that as much as we are condemning them from dating, these people are still dating and they are actively doing so. Number two, we are also talking of homosexuality. What is homosexuality? It is where both people of the same gender relate with each other. What are some of the signs that a girl should look at? What are some of the signs that a boy should look at when they are dating, when fellow sexual colleagues are, is it okay for boys to spend the same bed together? Is it okay when you see girls holding hands together? Is it okay when you see a girl and a girl kissing each other? These are some of the red signs that we should be helping girls to relate with. Lastly, it is whereby, and I think this is very normal in our 21st century, whereby girls or boys are dating older or younger people than them. Let me repeat it again. Boys or girls dating older or younger people than them. You realize those people who have done research, they'll tell you, any girl who has never had a father figure in their life, they will always yearn to date older men so that they can look for what we call the fatherhood affirmation. Boys who never had a mother's love will always go to sugar mommy so that they can look for mother's affirmation. And that's why I said it is the work of the counselor to help identify any crisis a boy should go through. And that's why I'm saying sexuality as a topic is very broad, so that this girl who is very prone to sex, we can ask, why do boys or teenagers fall into sexual trap very fast? Number one, is it emptiness? Number two, is it exposure? Number three, is it ignorance? Those three things can lead to a girl or a boy being exploited. Number one, exposure. Number two, emptiness. I am so empty within myself, I don't even have any value within my body, and that's why I can give it out. Or number three, some of them even are doing it out of ignorance. Remember, before, during our old days, and I'm so sure a majority of us who are listening to me, we never even had condoms during our time. The language of our times, the 90s, the 80s was abstain, abstain, abstain. But right now, with the new discoveries, condom is there. And that's why you are realizing our language of sex education have changed. We are talking of ABC, abstain, be faithful, or use condoms. But the question is, when we tell our children to be faithful, how do we tell our children to be faithful to a person who is not even they are married to? And I think what we are talking about as counselors is to give as adequate information as we can. And any person who is well equipped and informed can make decision comfortably without fear. But now check the society we are having in. I remember a girls' schools I visited. Some of the girls, and I'm very sorry, and that's why I say it, I think we also need to bring our parents on board. After this, what I'm requesting counselors to do is to organize forums for parents, because you realize, especially for boys, for girls' school, we have some parents who have already even give their girls, pills, monthly pills, pregnancy kits, so that wanawadunga shindano, so that once they pass to school, they don't fall pregnant. So these girls are having a lot of influences back at home. That is what we are calling exposure. And that's why I think as we talk Brace, the question of sexuality is a big debate that we need to discuss. Back to you, Brace.
Thank you once
Blaise,
again.
can I contribute? Excuse me, Blaise, can I contribute?
Mrs. Njue, you are always disappearing when we want you to make the contribution. Kindly, very, very briefly, just very briefly, you can give your contribution.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I wish to contribute on the issue of sexuality, and I want to add on what Wandere has said. There are issues that need to be checked. In schools, the issue of grooming is very important, so that you can avoid any desirable emotions that can arise from students and teachers because of the dressing code. Especially those who are in girls' schools, they need to check seriously on the length and the size of the skirts that the girls wear, since these girls at Form 2, Form 3, because of the stages that they're going through, they may increase in size and even the body curves. So the school administration and the counseling department should be able to advise the school accordingly on that, because when the girls are indecently dressed, it may provocate even the young teachers who come in, and it may end up being a nasty situation in a school setup. The girls also should be advised on the undergarments that they wear, because on sexuality issues, tunasema macho hayana pazia, and when someone is not well brought up in a Christian setting, somebody can be tempted. I advise that because most girls school use lighter blouses in color, especially white, I prefer if the girls can use a black bra, because that one does not really expose so much. And even the kind of underpants that they wear, they should be the ones that should not expose. So, and these young girls want to experiment, but the counseling department should advise accordingly and monitor closely, so that they don't underdress or overdress to provocate. There should also be grooming and the mentorship. Grooming for the teacher should also be talked about. Some of our young teachers, they may dress in a way that they can provocate even the boys and even the girls. So the male teachers and the female teachers also should be advised to dress decently and officially. Also, even their undergarments, also they should check on them. And also in the community that the society that we live, there has been a feeling that if I have a Form 3 student, and the Form 3 student is so friendly to my young boy, or the Form 3 girl is so friendly to my young girl, especially where we live in the community now setup, parents should be aware of these perverse behaviors of lesbianism and sodomy. I handled a case of a Form 3 student in a different school who had initiated several boys in for class 3, class 2, class 4 into homosexuality, and the parents were not aware. The parents were thinking that this is a friend of my son in primary, so they were very comfortable with the same. But the boy confided with me that he had already initiated them into the same acts. So the teacher should be aware. If you see a very close relationship of adults and the young ones, you should be very cautious. And also the young ones should be talked on the same, so that they are not preyed upon by the older ones. There's also an issue of the cultural practices, like the disco matangas in the Nyanza region and in Ukampani, the dowry payment cultures, practices that when there is that function in the homestead, people are welcomed, there is a lot of dances, and most of the young girls and boys who have confided to me that their first sexual encounters were during those cultural practices. The parents were busy with the visitors, and they were preyed upon by even adults who came to those functions, because in most of the functions, there is indulgence in even alcohols. So the parents should be aware of that and be able to advise accordingly and to take care of the young children when they have such functions. And the last one is about the fear of the Lord. The people should be taught to fear God, especially the ones in schools and even the teachers. Whatever you are doing in private, let us advise these young ones, whatever you are doing in private, if you can not do it in public when everybody's watching you, that is sin. Anything that you do when you are hiding, if you cannot do it publicly, that is sin, and it is born to bring you down, because sexuality and sex matters can bring even a king down. Let me stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Jue. I want to take
Madam
it back
Njau.
to Madam Njau, sorry. I want to take it back to Mr. Paul. Mr. Paul, I want us to move into our next topic, and this is the world of drugs and substance. And I'll start with a very simple question, Mr. Paul. What is a drug?
Bruce, can I request something? There's something I never handled that sexually. Can I use 3 minutes only to go to?
No, it's all right. It's all right.
Something we left. Number one, we said, what are the causes of our children being so active sexually? I think we need to help our teachers to understand why our children, the 21st century, are becoming very active, number one. And please, I think teachers should also be conscious of this. Number one is the puberty crisis. You realize, and I'm sure you know that, the food our children are eating today is so proteinous, and it may make them act very differently. So our children are growing very fast, and because of that, I think the information they are having, the exposure is quite much. I also wanted to talk about teenage crush. It is normal, like nowadays, to teenagers, it is fashion to be in a relationship. So we need also to be very careful and not to ignore that any person, even us, when we were teenagers, it was very normal for us to find ourselves into relationship. So any counselor, and I wanted to request counselors who are listening to me, topic on sex and sexuality should never miss in your session. Don't please ignore it. Don't assume everybody is strong enough to abstain. Some of them are in very serious relationships, and I think we need to address that. Number three, allow me also to mention something about homosexuality and lesbianism in school. I was reading a book. I think it is a discussion that is happening in America right now. And the biggest question they are having is homosexuality behavioral or inherited? I was listening to these people who are activists on gayism saying that they were born that way. I really went and researched on that. I have actually even bought 3 books on homosexuality, very big books, and I have read something that has really amazed me to say so. That number one, that the way I want to talk of the behavioral aspect of homosexuality before I even say that. Any boy who have a very possessive mother, any girl who have a very possessive father can end up becoming a homosexual or a lesbian. Why? They have already been so attached to their fathers. The boys have been so much attached to their mothers to an extent that their feelings towards the opposite gender is already suppressed, and they find themselves being attached to a gender who they were never attached to. Another thing that can cause homosexuality is when these children grow up in a very strict, a very moral home whereby their sexual awakeness is already suppressed. And that's why, and I would want you to realize, anytime you have ever listened to a homosexual or a lesbian talking, they talk out of bitterness because they feel like there is something they were denied. And because of that, their even awareness, their sexual feelings was suppressed. Another thing I think, and this one can also affect them, is something that is called broken homes. Any children who come from broken home, they suffer in what we call identity crisis. I have heard so many girls saying, I was very hurt in my past relationship. I hate men. Men are dogs, something like that. And so because of that pain they have, they tend now to suppress their feelings towards another gender. Another thing, and I think this is where homosexuality is growing, is what we call economic pressure. I know of so many people who are offering boys money, so many girls who are recruiting other girls into the club of lesbianism in exchange of money. I was dealing with a case in Nairobi here of a boy who was told, any boy you recruit into homosexuality, you give him a 5,000. A school in Thika, I don't want to mention that for my own issues. The fifth one, I think that can cause people to get into homosexuality is peer pressure. One homosexual or one lesbian in school is too much. Let me repeat that again. An active lesbian in school, an active gay boy in school is too much for a school, because what that person does is recruiting, and that's what we are talking of, peer pressure. The last one is bullying. I don't know whether you heard of this case, and I think it has been so much in the social media, of this boy in one school in Embu, a Form 1 boy, principal, innocently without knowing, because there was no space in the dormitory for Form 1s, took this boy to a Form 4 dormitory. And this boy was sexually abused by the Form 4s because of what we call bullying. I have had so many times of anytime these girls who are getting to Form 1s, they are given what we call mothers, or these mothers to look upon them, and so many of them recruit them into that. Somebody asked, and I think I'm reading a book, is homosexuality inherited? Is it generic? And they were saying, they gave a very good scenario in the Bible, and I would want you to go and research on it so that we don't spend a lot of time on it. In the book of Judges chapter 12, when Samson was born, you realize God was very particular to the mother of Samson. And God told the mother of Samson, if you want to give birth to this child, before you give birth to this child called Samson, do not take wine. And after this child is born, don't cut his hair. And so researchers are saying, when girls or when our ladies, and I'm so sure they are listening to us, when ladies take so much beer, the doctors who are called gynecologists usually tell ladies, when you are pregnant, avoid beer and avoid wine. Why? Wine and beer, in fact, by then I'm so sure you know that wine and beer, people who are so much into wine and beer, they usually are said to have a problem, what we call erectile dysfunction. I'm sure you know that. So they usually say, when ladies are taking beer and when ladies are taking wine and they are pregnant, that chemical in that beer has a hormonal effect on children. In fact, they say any boy born by a drunkard woman has a very low level of testosterone. And so they grow up with a sissy behavior because already the testosterone that brings out the male in them has been suppressed. And I would want you to go and take research. And I think that is the reason as to why you are hearing debate of people saying, I was born a homosexuality. And you realize children who are born, who are struggling with homosexuality must be having a problem during their birth, or it can be related back to their family level. Maybe lastly, as we come to our short break, I would want to, Madam Jacqueline, I don't know whether she is with us. Madam Jacqueline or Brace?
Yes.
I can hear you, Wandere.
Let us hear a bit from you, something about drugs. What do you think is a drug as far as you're concerned? Sorry, Brace, for taking your role. But
No, it's all right.
Tell us something about your understanding about drugs. Jacqueline?
A drug is any substance that is used in the wrong way. Any substance that is used in the wrong way or for the wrong reason.
Continue.
For example, it can even the tablets given in the hospital. If you use them in the wrong way for wrong purposes, then it becomes a drug. For example, now the students, they use sometimes, but there are some drugs that are in the market, new ones called Lift. Lift is used under the tongue. You put it under the tongue and then you feel high, you feel that you are drunk. So any substance that is used in the wrong way and then affects the body functioning mechanism is what I can term as a drug, Mr. Wandere.
Thank you so much. Brace, that is true. Jacqueline, thank you so much for a well-researched topic. I would also, for those people who are taking notes, I would say that drug, any substance that has an effect when introduced into our bodies. That drug is any substance which has an effect when introduced in the body. For example, I'll give you a very good example. Anytime you take Eno, and probably had a stomachache and you take Eno, you see your stomach just cool down. Anytime you take Panadol, your stomach, your head just cools down even after having a headache. That's why we are saying a drug it changes how our body functions. So drugs are not bad. Drugs are okay because when we go to hospital, we are given drugs. But what you realize about drugs is that we have what we call useful drugs and harmful drugs. Useful drugs and harmful drugs. So what we are discussing right now in our schools is something that we are calling harmful drugs. Otherwise, we should not categorize that drugs are bad and drugs. But we were saying there are three categories of drugs. We have what we call use, abuse, and we have what we call addictions. Brace and other people who are listening to me, you'll realize that why we are always recommended to use drugs that are tested by the doctors is because there is something that we call prescriptions. And that's why ukienda hospitali unakunanga daktari amekuandikia 1 times 2 or 2 times 2 or 2 times 3. That is what we call prescriptions. But the drugs, that is when we are talking of useful drugs. But we are now coming and saying a useful drug can be harmful if abused or addicted. For example, I'll give a very good example. There are some people who lack sleep and they use Piriton so that they can get sleep. If you use Piritons uncontrollably, that means you are either abusing it or you are getting addicted to it, and what your body does, it resists it. But now in our subject today, we are not talking of useful drugs. We want to talk of harmful drugs. And I think those are the ones that Madam Jacqueline was talking about. And I think what we need to do is to discuss the drugs that we are having in our schools. Probably we'll be coming to discuss that probably after short breaks. But we are saying we need to understand that the society we are living in, our drugs are so much available. And we have said that probably after break, I'll be showing our panelists and people, our participants, some of the drugs that are available in the market and the effect they have to our children. But we have said we need to equip counselors to know that when we are talking of drugs usage, we talk it on 3 levels. There is what we call the drug use. These are regular users. somebody smokes during holiday, they are waiting to go and smoke during holiday. And at that level, it may not seem to be very harmful, while it is really harmful because what it is doing, it is adapting to your body. So I think we need also to address children who are taking drugs at that particular level. We are also having people we call abusers. Abusers are people who are, although they are taking drugs, but the drugs have started adapting with their body. I remember when we were doing biology, I think it is in secondary school, Form 2, Form 3, we were talking of adaptation of plants, adaptation of animals. We are also saying the longer you start taking harmful drugs, the harmful drugs start with adapting your body, such that to an extent you reach, such that those drugs that you are abusing start becoming addicts. To an extent, you feel even what you are taking is not enough. When you feel what you are taking is not enough, you go to the level that we call addiction, or you are becoming addictive, or you are becoming addicted. We have always said one of the role of a counselor is to classify the three. In fact, can I say this? I'm requesting counselors to know that nowadays we have what we call the drug tests. You know, the drug test whereby kakitu kananunuliwa, which I had it here, the drug test kit. Unachukua tu kako kakitu, mtu akikuta, you notice that somebody is taking drugs in your school. I'm requesting principals to go at an innovative hire. And I wish I came with a sample of a drug kit. What that you need to do, okay, realize that a particular student is taking drugs in your school, before you even take them through counseling, it is good you understand the level of use up on which that child is. And as a poor, he is just a normal user, maybe he is just at introductory level. Or number two, he is already abusing drugs such that as much as he is willing to leave it, he is unable to resist. Or number three, maybe you are dealing with an addict who, even if you counsel them, this person belongs to a rehab. And that's why I'm saying, I think we need to introduce what we call drug kits in our schools. Although they're expensive, but the truth of the matter is, anytime you have an evidence that the child has abused a drug, all that we are requesting you to do, take their paraffin, take their urine. And we have already advised teachers to realize this. Some of these children, if you give them permission to go to the toilet to urinate and bring you the urine, they are mixing that urine with water. So I think you need probably to use your office so that you can give them their right to privacy. Once they urinate, bring that urine. There is that test where you open, you insert that paper, just like the way we do with pregnant. Actually, it is similar with the pregnancy kit. It is able to bring out and tell you this person is already addicted to marijuana or addicted to drugs. That's what we are saying. You remember during Motutho's time, when Motutho was the chairman of NACADA, he brought a very funny concept of using dogs in schools. You see, dogs in school to test drugs, that is just an elimination measure, but we are talking of people who are already struggling with drugs. Once you are able to get to do the test, you're able to know the student you are dealing with is either addicted to marijuana or addicted to drugs. That kit, I think it's in shops or in chemists, it's around 700 shillings. From that level, you are able to categorize the student into three levels. Is my student a user? Is my student an abuser? Or is my student an addict? If he is an user, that student can be held by a counselor through counseling session so that you get the drug history, how he was introduced. You help him by teaching him on the effect of the drugs he is taking, and also try to help them to avoid the places where he goes or the companies he keeps that makes him use that drugs. The same test can help you know whether that child is an abuser. Abuser means he has consistently used that drug and his body is adapting to that drug. That child needs medical help. They can go to the hospital and get prescriptions. There are two prescriptions they can be given. Sometimes unaonanga wakipatiwa tudawa tungine tunakaa particles, or sometimes they can be injected so that that body can now be injected so that it is a drug-free body. Ama, that desire to take drug is removed. If not that, the test can also tell you the child has taken drugs at a level of 80%. That child, even if you take them through counseling, you have not helped them. That child belongs to a rehabilitation center. And that's why I'm talking to the counselor and saying, probably in the counseling department, what we need now to bring on board is something that is called the drugs kit. And that's why I'm requesting the individual counseling departments, we bring NACADA on board, because what NACADA are doing, they are giving these drug kits at a subsidized cost, so that these people we are talking of drugs, before even we cancel them, we take them through what is called tests. Because some of them, we have four categories of students in school. There are students in school who never uses drugs. They need information. We have students who have introduced themselves into the drugs world. They also need counseling, plus also understand where they're coming from and the reason they are taking drugs. Number 3, we have abusers. They have consistently been using drugs, and their bodies have started becoming adapted to drugs. Those students need medical help, not just psychological help. And then we have number 4, people we call addicts. They are struggling. They are already so much into the drugs world, and they don't know how to come out. Those children, they also need to be helped so that you can also help them come out. Maybe Brace, back to you. How I wish you can involve our panelists so that you can understand some of the drugs that they are finding available in their school. Back to you, Brace.
Okay, thank you. I think that is a good suggestion, Mr. Paul. What I would suggest first is we take a small break as usual, our 10 minutes, so that people can have a drink, can have some tea, can have something, can stretch their bodies. And we are going to start again at 11:05. So can we meet at 11:05? We are having a small break. And when it is 11:05, be sure it is going to be 11:05. See you then.
Thank you.